Hey, happy Sunday. Welcome to episode 77. At least I think it's 77 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Freeman. I'm a public speaker and a perseverance coach, and basically I help people persevere so they can do what they want to do in life. Today is so exciting. I'm with two people I've known for quite a long time. I'll tell you more in a minute. Be right back, I think. Oh yeah, be right back. Okay.
Today's guest, Dr. Matt Barker and Dr. Ryan Schellpfeffer.
I've known Dr. Ryan and Matt for a while, as you'll see. Dr. Ryan Schellpfeffer and Dr. Matt Barker are brilliant doctors. Ryan is an anesthesiologist. Matt is a urogynecologist, and they've been friends since kindergarten. I met them both later in life, in first grade. We attended a school called All Saints together. On this special episode of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast, we remember our early school days, the joys as well as the challenges. I'm excited to ask Dr. Matt and Dr. Ryan about the world inside the operating room and find out how we can be better patients too. Please welcome Matt and Ryan. Please welcome Matt and Ryan. Please. Okay. Hey, Matt. Hey, Ryan.
Hello. Hi, Jason. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. And so this all came about. I was speaking at a grade school, which is now a retirement community, and Matt said, "Oh, we should do a podcast where we reminisce on memories," and it just sounds like an amazing idea. So here we are.
I think it's great, Jason, and being your friend for so long, of all the people that I thought would become a Luddite and not embrace technology, you were quite high on my list. You live in this nice place where you can read and be unconnected from the world and write poetry. And here you are doing things that I'm amazed by. And I'm so old now that I don't know how I could start a podcast. So you've surprised me as your lifelong friend of your technological abilities.
Thanks. It's I like being thought of as technically savvy.
It's hard to do in your 40s.
So you both went to kindergarten together.
Well, I went to two different kindergartens, so half of my kindergarten experience is with Matt. Yes.
Yeah, he was much more advanced in kindergarten, so he had two schools. So Ryan really took me under my wing as I was slowly developing my knowledge of continents. So he still knew me at a time when I suffered from what I treat now.
Nice.
Yes,
Thank you,
failed
Ryan.
Kindergarten in Wisconsin, so I got to repeat it in South Dakota.
South
didn't know that.
Dakota doesn't count Wisconsin kindergarten?
Yeah, apparently not.
No reciprocity.
No reciprocity.
and then it just Ryan and our paths have kind of crossed throughout all of our schooling, and then coming back to Sioux Falls and meeting up again with you, Jason. It's been fun to share all those memories, especially like All Saints, and see how we all done later in life.
So our paths have crossed again, but you two went in different directions in terms of college and then med school, right?
That's correct.
I was hoping you would like kind of elaborate on where you went to college.
Well, I know he became an anesthesiologist. He's so quiet. He doesn't have to chat like all day. He can man a few words at times.
That's right. Yeah. So after All Saints, our time together, I went to the public schools here in Sioux Falls, Mark Twain, Patrick Henry, Lincoln High School. And then I'm not Catholic, but I then pursued Catholic education for undergraduate at University of Notre Dame and medical school at Georgetown University.
Surprised they didn't convert you.
How about you, Barker?
Yeah, so when we went out to All Saints together, then I followed Ryan to Mark Twain. And then for junior high, I went to Catholic school at St. Mary. And then I went to boarding school in Chicago. And then I went to Creighton University in Omaha. Then went back up to South Dakota for medical school. And Ryan and I just missed by a year there. Our paths crossed. And then went to Wisconsin because Ryan didn't succeed well there in kindergarten. And I thought we needed to, bring some new depth of South Dakotans there again to show that we can formally educate ourselves. And did my residency and then fellowship in Cincinnati and moved back to South Dakota. And I remember my parents invited Ryan and his wife and kids over when trying to entice my wife and I to move back, to say that there's other nice young families back in Sioux Falls. So you need to come back and move back to Sioux Falls.
Apparently it worked.
It did. Yes. Thank you. Tell Allie, thank you.
Well, Ryan Flipson says hi, Barker.
Oh, hi, Ryan. I was just with his brother the other day. Ryan's a good dude.
Yeah, he really good.
This is crazy. I'm like new to all these things they can do with this podcast, but I like that it's awkwardly awesome. And I want to put a plug in for your book, Jason, because I loved reading your book, and it's interesting to hear your memories and how our memories kind of overlap with friends and the school, and what a lasting impact a very small Episcopalian elementary school had on the three of us.
And when we better show the picture. And when we say very small, we mean very small. I remember our third grade class. It was a big deal because it was the big class with 15 kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably have that photo somewhere of all of us. The red sweaters and the emblem. I had a lot of regalia there at that Episcopalian school that I think my kids would, not sure they would wear all those things.
I don't think we had a choice.
No.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
there we go.
what all things look like.
Still does. It's this old quarry stone, which is like kind of mined there and excavated in South Dakota. That a very beautiful brick.
So how did you to think of it when, like, I kind of thought like we were going to school at a castle.
Yeah, that's a good description of it. That felt like a castle. It had underground tunnels and kind of, I imagine, secret rooms and who knows what else. There was more different kind of buildings on the campus than there are now, but it was certainly an intriguing place.
Yeah, the fact that none of us have mesothelioma is amazing.
we couldn't go upstairs in the main building, which was interesting.
Yeah, what do you think was up there? What were they hiding?
Any theories, Matt?
No, but these kids watch like Harry Potter and all those things, and we would have been that age in third grade of like reading those books or thinking about it. And we had a head mistress, Mrs. Whitcomb, and she had these gorgeous nails. I mean, this is probably before they had those fake nails. I mean, just long nails and red, and she had was always dressed to the nine, but a very just, she was a very nice lady, but just kind of like intimidating just of those nails. That's what I remember, but maybe it's because I probably got in trouble and had to go to her office. And just a very pretty lady. And then walking through all the, like you said, Ryan, all like the corridors and the formal lunches we had where the teachers sat up at one table and we were out at smaller tables, and the fresh food and eating like that and praying before a meal or going to mass in the chapel. I think of it like how kids would read Harry Potter at a young age.
Yeah, they did a lot to promote community there between the different activities and the way we ate. It was a nice place to be. It was very comfortable.
To this day, my favorite sandwich is egg salad because they made this delicious egg salad sandwich there that was fresh. And that is why I love egg salad, is because of All Saints.
They were excellent.
I remember the mac and cheese, like they would use a bunch of different kinds of cheeses. It was so good.
Yeah, they weren't just a Velveeta place. They mixed some different blends there. It was lovely.
How do you think this experience of being in this tight-knit community helped you as you proceeded on to public school and then on into your careers?
Ryan, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it really laid the foundation, being in those small classrooms, to understand the material. I guess it's hard to say since other than repeating kindergarten, I never had an experience. Similar to that at another school, but I think you got more attention from the teachers, and I really felt like you were, less likely to be overlooked at a place like that.
No.
Yeah, I remember us all being friends at that small age. I don't remember anyone being mean or having some differences there, but I remember our third grade Mrs. Emmons, our third grade teacher. To this day, she's still the nicest teacher I ever had. And third grade's when you really start embracing reading. And I just remember her, she made me want to read and do those things. And to this day, in fact, Ryan and I are in a book club together. And, third grade was when I really kind of embraced reading as a leisure activity.
Talk about the ripple effect that teachers have throughout life. That's amazing.
Totally. But I just remember her, of all the teachers there. I mean, we ended it at third grade, but I just remember her and just what a positive influence it had on me.
I remember she took us on fun field trips. Like one day we went to the river and we were in the river with nets catching crawdads.
Yes, I remember that. It was by 26th Street.
Yes.
And then we had the crawdads in a little pool like a kiddie pool in her classroom, I think.
Whatever happened to those?
I hope we released them back into the wild.
Well, it was the 80s. I bet they got released into the sewer system.
Yeah, the Big Sioux was at its prime then in the 80s. Luckily, it was upstream from John Morell's.
Oh.
But I remember in third grade, these vivid memories you have as a kid that my kids will never experience, is we had chalkboards. And then you had these big black chalkboard erasers. And I remember, Jason, we'd be on eraser duty together, and we'd have to go on the front steps of that old castle building, banging the chalk out of the erasers, and there'd just be all this dust flying there at the end of the day.
Oh my gosh, I forgot that until you mentioned it.
I mean, no one will know what that is. That's just crazy that, I don't feel I'm that old, but to have those kind of, history and that those steps are still the same when we were there at the school building.
And speaking of technology, like we were learning basic. Mrs. Pagoni and her husband were teaching us basic on these big PIC computers. I mean, long before the internet and long before apps.
And I remember, didn't she teach us? And we had Lovey Bliss would teach us French. Remember
That's
French
right.
lessons? We had
Yep.
a half day of French classes. I mean,
Dude.
the school was ahead of its time, and look how it all influenced us just to have those kind of experiences.
So how did you both come to choose professions that took you into the operating room? Changing subjects slightly here.
Well, obviously speaking for myself, but both of us have fathers who are physicians as well. So I think that obviously was part of the calculus. You kind of are familiar with what you see when you're growing up.
Yeah, and I think that school is full of we're all kids of physicians, and there's a lot of push on academics and for being a child of a physician or a clinician or a provider. And I think I think all three of us probably look up to our dads.
Yeah, right.
And that was clearly an influence for all of us. And what's interesting is all three of our dads are friends and contemporaries. And it's kind of fun to see a whole nother generation of that work together. And for me, for medicine, it is kind of what I mean, I guess if my dad, owned a plumbing business, I'd probably have been a plumber, but he was a gastroenterologist, and that was a harder business to start. And so chose medicine.
But specifically the operating room, how do you, like there's all kinds of doctors you could be with. What led you both into the operating room?
Well, I can say for me, I maybe I'm not the most patient person, and the way the world of the operating room works is quickly, so the medicines you give and everything, they work on the order of seconds to minutes, and you see an effect almost right away. And that's just the way it works there. You're operating on a scale of minutes to hours versus seeing someone back in clinic, say months later. And there's a place for everyone in medicine, but I knew for me, it was just a more interesting and stimulating environment where things are happening quickly like that. And also, I'll say I didn't particularly like being in clinic. When I'd have the all-day clinic days in med school, I decided, I knew right then I couldn't do clinic all day.
I like the mixture because I'm half in the OR, half in the clinic. I don't mind talking to patients in clinic, and I like that aspect. And my dad was a gastroenterologist, and I tell this story a lot. My mom was a advocate for women's rights, and so I kind of chose women's health and specifically urogynecology just because I liked the functional nature of that, improving quality of life, and have that balance of both clinic and the operating room. I like that balance. I like that challenge of one is much more physical and technical. The other, you have to really think and balancing those. But I want to tell this one story about Ryan, and this is the beauty of friendship and networking. But Ryan and I being friends for a long time, I had this really challenging patient who was worried about anesthesia. She had a bad complication from another hospital. She was coming to see me for another procedure and really nervous about her anesthesia. And I called Ryan. I said, hey, here's what happened to this person. And Ryan got all of her records and came over to my clinic to personally meet with this patient. And to this day, I think Ryan did it because he's my friend, but I think knowing Ryan, the kind of person he is, he would do that for anybody. But I always thought, man, you don't have an anesthesiologist that would normally do this. And I think that's kind of that extension of friendship, but also kind of the kind of physician Ryan is, and probably why I'm friends with him, to be honest, that he would do that. And that doesn't happen normally. And so I thought a podcast like this would be a good time to tell that story for Ryan. So thanks, buddy.
Glad to do it for you.
As a doctor, you have such a ability to impact people's lives, and that act of kindness of looking at the records and coming across town to reassure a patient who is really nervous. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry about
I'm just thank you for telling the story. I think part of my job is usually it's a pretty short amount of time I have with people before they go back to the operating suite, but just to try to make them feel at ease and comfortable with what they're about to undergo. And if it requires, coming and seeing them ahead of time, that's, certainly something that we were happy to do for people.
But Ryan will also tell you about the time when one of my patients drove. She was an irreverent individual and had surgery, and Ryan was putting her to sleep. And he's like, "Oh, doctor, Dr. Barker's doing your surgery." And she's like, "I love that little shit." All right. So that's how she referred to me. And Ryan still, I think, remembers that lady. I don't know. She was pretty irreverent.
You have had lots of interesting patients.
Nice. So I'm with Dr. Matt Barker and Dr. Ryan Schellpfeffer today. We were classmates since first grade, and I have tons of questions for them, and we have tons of questions for each other. But if you're tuning in and want to ask them any questions about medicine, or about their lives, or why Matt's wearing snow pants.
I thought this was going to be a audio. I wasn't sure that I would have shaved and combed my hair, but
so you were
see real me.
Right.
At least he has pants on.
They're holding up by suspenders.
So this is actually the perfect segue. You talked about teamwork with that last story. So talk about the importance of teamwork in the operating room.
Oh, it's everything. It's really important. And, it certainly has evolved even within our careers in terms of how comfortable various members of the team are in terms of speaking up. And, it certainly used to be, kind of the surgeon was the captain of the ship and everyone is just going to, not question their authority. And it's certainly evolved now to where we do, a timeout, which is usually led by the operating room nurse, where we make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what we're doing and various other details of the procedures before we even proceed with it. So I think it's, communication is hard, especially when you bring various people that have different levels of training, but we're all there to help with a specific task on that particular day. And I think anything you can do to encourage communication when done appropriately is a good thing.
Yeah, no, Ryan's right. It's definitely evolved into a team-based approach where I think still surgeons and anesthesiologists can kind of set the tone in a room, but you want everyone to feel comfortable and be able to speak up and know what we're doing, whether it's the circulating nurse in there or the nurse anesthetist that's working closely with the anesthesiologist to the surgical tech that's helping you. You want an environment where people can, want to work together as a team and have fun. When we do these cases, we have that special timeout and take care that everything's planned out. And, if any of the surgical techs or nurses or anesthesiologists that work with me, I follow the same pattern every time. I have this order where I do things. And to me, everything's a step, and I want to make sure that's all in line. And so we'll go over that beforehand. But then I also have music playing just to kind of have somewhat relaxing where you're thinking through those steps. But it's also a time for that music needs to be turned off or not. When we take that time out, we know all the steps, and then everyone's kind of working in harmony. It can be a pretty smooth process. And it's amazing what we can do in medicine now, and from a surgical standpoint, and the fact that anesthesiologists can keep people anesthetized for fairly complex cases or regional anesthetics. It's just impressive, but it takes a village, and working closely with all those parts, and that everyone has an open line of communication where they feel comfortable is great.
Ryan Flipson says teamwork, timeouts, and open communication are good things.
I would agree, Ryan. And big shout out. Ryan's a good dude, and I think having those kind of things, especially people who've had a lot of surgeries done to them, they want to know that people are going in there well prepared. And the fact that they meet with everybody before a case. So if someone has surgery with me, they'll meet with Ryan before the procedure. I'll come in and see him before the procedure. Then we talk with the team before at the timeout and make sure everything's all set up, because those are all key components, and that's the key to the success.
So speaking of team, the patient is obviously asleep during the procedure, which, I mean, that qualifies as me stating the absolute obvious, but how can the patient, what can the patient do to show up to the game in the best possible way to help create a good outcome for themselves? Does that make sense?
Totally. And Ryan can talk on some of this stuff too, but what we do in my clinic, we have this thing called enhanced recovery after surgery, but it's this whole process of preparing people for surgery. So getting in shape, quitting smoking, eating well, and a healthy lifestyle, taking the right medicine. So there's always that workup to the surgery. And then the types of medicines and things we have people drink before surgery, and then the types of medicines before and after. So following these new protocols that kind of help with postoperative nausea, help with pain management, helps for less complications. Ryan's anesthesia team and my clinic and the nurses are helpful in implementing those things. So your surgeon should have a whole packet of information that can help you prepare. And I don't know if, Ryan, you can talk about enhanced recovery after surgery programs or what they're doing for.
Yeah, certainly not just your specialty, but many specialties are implementing those, and they've been, I think, fairly effective in getting people, through the whole process with less side effects and home sooner. So yeah, and to that end, I guess I would encourage you to be the most prepared you can be, is to follow all the instructions and steps in there, because the last thing I want to do is talk to somebody and find out they had something to eat, the morning of their surgery, and they thought, well, it's just a little bit or something, and that really puts us in a tough spot, because it's really malpractice to put somebody to sleep, if they haven't met the guidelines, that are established in terms of safety, in terms of how long you can eat before surgery. So I would encourage people to make sure to follow the instructions, even if you think they're not that important, or you can fudge a little bit on the times. Don't do that. Just do what your surgeon asks you to do, and then everything will hopefully go as smooth as possible.
Yeah, every time I have medical students, I say there's one rule in medicine: you can't cut corners. Anytime you cut a corner, bad things happen. So you follow all these. We have all these rules and policies in place, is to keep people safe.
Even when no one's cutting corners or anything like that, still, I'm sure there's stressful moments during surgery. How does the team cope when something stressful comes up during surgery? Something unanticipated, maybe.
I think it gets back to that communication part we were talking about before. People ask me if my job is stressful, and certainly, from time to time things happen. That's just, that's the way life is. But, in general, most of the things that happen have a pretty established pathway on which you can work your way down in order to figure out what the problem is and solve it fairly quickly. So to me, work is rarely stressful. I think it'd be much more stressful to, run a daycare, or there are all sorts of other things. It would be much more stressful for me, even if I come in the room and the patient's, not breathing or something, and there's a problem that needs to be fixed within a minute or two. I know in my mind right away, the first 6, 7, or 8 things we need to do, and we're going to do those very quickly. The people I work with are good. They're going to get the stuff we need, and we're going to fix the problem. So I just think it's a matter of being prepared, and from there, everything just flows.
I love that there's some All Saints people out there giving shout out. I see, I think Carl Grupp's out there, and the nice people we've met over the years. But with surgery, I agree. That's why I kind of follow things in a pattern to know that if the step changes, where am I at in my process? What are the potential things that could go awry? How do I rectify it right there? And then making sure I had all the right pieces there. If I needed something, the surgical tech knows this is what I normally need. This is where things happen, and my techs and nurse practitioners and physician assistants that help me in the OR kind of know where I'm at in the procedure, and they know where this is a little bit higher risk of a bleeding episode. We need this clamp or this type of a device to help rectify that problem. And so that early communication is always key. And then what I don't people understand is like how well physicians work together. If I helped someone, I get called into the operating room to help somebody out, or I need to help someone to come in, there's always people available. And, building those teams and building those relationships are key, because, you always need to help someone else. And especially in the operating room, everybody knows if someone says, hey, I need help, that person will drop what they're doing and run in and help. And everyone does that. It's just kind of this thing that happens in surgery that I just like, especially where Ryan and I work. It's been my experience. The collegiality of everyone involved is just so great.
Yeah, if you call for help, you're generally going to get more than you need.
But that's good. Yeah.
I don't even know all the operating suites located in the same part of the hospital.
No, there's a couple different locations, including out at the new campus on 69th and Louise.
Yeah,
but when you're operating, there's operating suites around you.
That's correct. They're usually grouped in chunk. It's one area of the hospital is where all the operating rooms are.
Well, I had no idea that there was a collegiality between operations. That's powerful.
Well, I think that people don't understand that but knowing that you go into the operating room, if something's, I said, hey, this could happen, we might need someone else in here, or sometimes we'll do combined cases together and work with anesthesia, and maybe there's a better form of anesthesia. So,
yeah, I mean, all of us at one point or another get into a situation where you need help from somebody else. And so when somebody else asks you for that, I'm of course going to go and help them, because you don't want to be in a situation where you need help and people for some reason wouldn't be willing to do that. So yeah, most people are very good about helping out when it's needed.
But I think that's why doctors become friends, because, everyone's kind of friends within their own type of industry or what have you. But especially in medicine, the demands of it and the stress of it sometimes can be a little bit different. And, Ryan and I have a book club of guys, and we're different types of physicians, but it's interesting. We all kind of share these stories, and knowing others in the field, how much medicine overlaps. Even though I'm in urogynecology, sometimes I see some eye diseases where I have a relationship with a colleague that I know, and those types of friendships are always key. And this podcast and talking about all this, and I think the fact that we're friends is so key to, I couldn't be successful in my job if I didn't develop those kind of friendships and relationships. And we just happened to grow up in a small town where we all came back to and maintain those friendships. And like when we get together and talk, we talk about things that happened to us when we were kind of knowing us in our prime, in third grade or second grade or first grade. That you go back to that, where we might have some college friends where we resort back to where we were when we first met those friends at 19 or 20 or what have you. It's just interesting, the three of us, how our lives are still overlap for over 40 years is crazy.
Carl Grepp says having dinner this evening with another All Saints alum, Chris Hoggle.
Well, it's fun that,
awesome.
well, even like these parents were friends. Remember, Ryan, Carl Grepp's father, the artist, came and had dinner with us to talk about a book he wrote, and what a neat guy that was. And if it wasn't for All Saints, we probably wouldn't have been able to be friends with that type of person, and to learn from Carl's dad, who had a huge impact in the arts community in South Dakota, and probably one of the funnier guys I know, and what a reverend guy, and I sure miss him.
He had such an amazing laugh.
Yes, he did.
It was from the belly and just forceful. It was awesome.
So what are some of the being doctors now for many years? What are some of the misconceptions that you think that people who are not doctors have about doctors? Don't always speak at once.
Let Ryan go with this one first.
Oh, put me on the spot.
So Matt just gives you all the questions he doesn't want to answer.
It's not my first podcast.
Give me an example of a misconception, Jason, that is there anything you're thinking of specifically that people might think?
Oh, I think one common one is kind of putting doctors up on a pedestal and thinking doctors can do no wrong, maybe.
Yeah. I think with the advent of the internet, I think patients are coming to their physicians with a lot more information than they probably did when our fathers were our age. And so, because it's certainly easy to go out there and Google, whatever condition you want to look up. And as we all know, the quality of that information can vary greatly depending on your source. So I think probably people don't view their physicians as all-knowing so much anymore. They're more willing to question what their physician has to say to them. Matt, have you run into that at all?
Oh, completely. Especially in my field, there's a lot of different ways we can do things, and not one is necessarily the right way. And to take that information and then kind of filter it to the individual is kind of now has become our role as a physician. It is definitely not the paternalistic field it was not that long ago, which is a good thing. And patients should question me. They should say, why are you doing this versus that, and take the time to understand that. So I think the knowledge can be dangerous, but I like the fact that if people are going to look up those things, that they're taking some ownership of their health. And I think it's reasonable for people to do that and work with their doctor as part of a team, rather than me saying, you have to do this or you need to do that. And I think now in the age of internet, so sometimes people come and see me and then they go online and they can say, oh, he was a jerk or he was short, where people's misperception of those meetings and in medicine doesn't always have and allow for the time we need to take for people to completely comprehend what's going on. And it might take multiple visits. For me, the thing that patients understand, like especially being a surgeon and going to the OR, my dad was a gastroenterologist and he had a coffee cup in his office that said E. coli happens. All right. And shit does happen. And it's not always hard to prepare for it. And I can tell you if we're being reflective and as a physician, and I've done a lot of surgeries in my life, and I can tell you we're the ones that go wrong or something happened or someone didn't get the outcome they wanted. It takes its toll on people. I mean, we're just as human as the next person. And I think that's why you hear comments about burnout and those types of things, because no one ever trained me in all these years of school how to handle something not going as planned. And that has been a lifelong lesson that I still struggle with, or how do I come back from that? Make sure it doesn't affect my family or it doesn't change things, or how do I rectify that and come back and be a better physician, or how do I maintain that relationship with a patient? And those are real struggles. And I think that's why you hear these podcasts about burnout or people changing their field or those things, because that's where I think the real struggle is, and where if we can work as a team and have a good relationship with the patients, you can help them through the ups and downs of things happening.
How do you I mean, you both are in very challenging professions. How do you stay interested and stay on the interested, passionate end of being a doctor instead of falling into this is so challenging and falling more towards the burnout end of the continuum?
Well, I can tell you virtually every single day I'll come across, say, a medicine or a condition that one of my patients has that I maybe don't remember as well as I should have, or I think I need to write that down and just even spend 5 minutes looking up, refreshing my memory what that is again, even if it's not necessarily that pertinent to what we're doing. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But medicine is such a big, vast field that every day there's something I come across that piques my interest. I think, you know what, I need to review that, or I need to look that up. And I appreciate that. I think it keeps it interesting. Much as Dr. Barker was saying, he kind of has a pathway he follows. What we do in anesthesiology is very similar. But there's always minor little tweaks, and every patient is a little bit different. So despite the fact that it's overall big picture similar, every little case has its own little unique differences, and I really enjoy that part of it.
So you're constantly learning new things, huh? Hi, Dr. Schellpfeffer.
Correct, or relearning things that I've forgotten.
Yeah, repetition, and I think that's why they call it practice. No one. Are you doing medicine? No, I'm practicing medicine. It's constantly something you have to be challenged by, and for me, I love what I do. I really think I chose the right career path for me, and I still like it. It's challenging. It's fun. It's rewarding, and finding those things. So when Ryan and I'm sure he says the same thing. Has medical students with us. I'm always like, whatever you do, choose the career that you just like to learn home. You go home and you had fun that day. You said, hey, I had a great day. And if you do that, your job is much easier.
What do you do to relax, like after a challenging day or a challenging week? Or what are some of the things that you like to do to relax?
Mine goes two ways after a rough day. Either I like to go and work out or exercise, which gets harder and harder to do and more challenging, or I like to veg out and eat snacks and watch television after a hard day. But I feel much better when I do the exercise and maintain that aspect where it kind of clears my head. And I think what also helps is now that I have young kids, and if you come home stressed or those types of things, is I have a little bit longer commute to just take those few moments of relaxing before I walk in the door. Seem to help balance my life. I don't know about you, Ryan.
Yeah, no, similar. I have, well, they're not such young kids anymore, but they're roughly the same age as yours. They're a good way to kind of change the tone of my day if it's been, negative. And also, yeah, going out for a run or a bike ride is a good way to kind of, clear my head a little bit and get the blood moving in a different way.
And doing it with your kids, I don't know, like I am taking some time off of work. I like to ski, like to snow ski, and I do it with my son, and having those hobbies and doing things together, traveling as a family, those just take my mind off and kind of refresh me. So the more I can do of those, the things are great. Which is another good thing about South Dakota and being a little kid was Great Bear Ski Valley was a great thing to have as a little kid, and fun to watch my kids there too.
I always thought it was kind of a tell that it's called a ski valley instead of a ski hill.
Yeah, it's more of a valley.
Yeah, I'd say it's a valley.
Carl has a great question. Any funny stories of a client self-diagnosis being a little off?
What rating is this podcast, Jason? Where you might feel
MA.
I like my 12-year-olds watching. I think, Ryan, maybe you see this too, is since COVID, I think everyone's ability to cope with stress has been challenged. And there are many of us, and myself included, that don't handle the stress as well as we once did. So when someone happens to them, whether it's, from what I see, like urinary incontinence or things falling down or pain, they come in and it is an utter emergency, which I understand, but it's that change in their normalcy. We don't have the reserve tank to handle stress. I don't think it's funny, but I think that's one thing I've noticed. It's been, I think, harder to practice medicine, and I think many providers out there would agree. Ryan, I think I have to look down to you, or to kind of look like kind of a real Brady Bunch interaction here. But
yeah.
Speaking of stress, we had this is a horribly awkward segue, but there's no good segue to this next thing. No good segue, but and Ryan says relax and recharge, definitely. But in grade school, at All Saints, we had this wonderful experience, but then after a year or two after we left All Saints, one of our great friends got hit by a car. He was biking and died.
Yeah, well, you brought this up when we went to your speech about John Gridley, who was all of our friends growing up. And I think when I heard your talk about it, was just a few months ago. He was in 4th grade, and I have a 4th grade little boy right now, and I know Ryan does too. And I couldn't process it at that age. And I think when I heard you talk, I just broke down crying, because I don't think I ever cried about it when I was in 4th grade. I didn't understand it. And I think that was still probably one of the more traumatic things that we all first experienced. And, given the state of the world now, it seems true, but for our personal lives and for me personally, losing John was impacted my life greatly. How about you, Ryan? When all that went down, and now I think.
Yeah, I remember when my parents told me that it didn't happen. It was just kind of shocking. It just, at that stage of your life, it's not typical to, lose friends when you're
No.
growing up. So, yeah, it is a hard thing to process, and maybe I'm still processing it all these years later. Just wondering about like what he would have done, or would he be living in Sioux Falls? Would he be on this podcast with us or something? So
Yeah, John was an interesting guy. I mean, he was probably the smartest kid I've ever met in my whole life, and just an old soul. And
Yeah.
you told the stories great, Jason, about him. I mean, just describe John, like, how he'd walk into a classroom with a briefcase.
with his briefcase.
Yes, the guy had a briefcase.
Mm. What are some of the stories you both remember about him?
Yeah, he was just exceptionally sharp and just a very fun kid to be around.
He'd be the kind of kid that would talk to your parents and enjoy them in a conversation, and not like, goofy. He would just knowledgeable and just, I think of all those wonderful, smart, accomplished people we met at All Saints, John would have been superseded all of us in terms of what he would have become. And that's why I think it's so hard to talk about, just because he was just a special person and just ahead of his time, and owned his being eccentric. I mean, I remember he had a trench coat, but like, like over a suit, and we still wore suit and ties back then when we went to places.
He did you? He did.
I think we
I
wore
didn't
like a
have
sport
to.
coat when we went to, remember Captain 11? I think I had a birthday party at Captain 11, and I think he had like a sport coat on. I remember I had a brown suit and a white cowboy hat, but at John, it was always very, very formal, and he just had interesting things like the toys at his house. It was always, he was tinkering with something that was far beyond a fourth grader's knowledge.
Well, I think I told this a few months ago at All Saints, but this story seems so bizarre. But one day we were out on his porch having a sleepover, and we were in our sleeping bags, and suddenly I wake up and John's sleeping bag is on fire. And I yelled, and his dad came running out and put it out. But it turned out he had put heating tape in his sleeping bag.
Yeah.
It's to a fourth grader, it was a very important, like, knowledgeable, seemed a reasonable thing, and the fire retardancy of sleeping bags in the early 1980s were probably not where they are today. So I'm amazed he came out of that unscathed.
Yeah, yeah.
But remember where John was biking to, and I don't know this. I mean, I miss John Gridley more than any friend we've ever had, just because to lose a friend at such a impressionable age. But he was biking for a job he worked at like a computer store, if I remember right.
That's correct. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine my 9 or 10-year-old doing that, and just to kind of see what an incredible thing. It's just his life to be taken so soon was hard, and I think I'm not understanding it now until I'm 46 years old. When I was 10 years old, it didn't make any sense.
This makes me think of there's so much trauma people have experienced with the pandemic and with the war in Ukraine, and trauma is just hard to understand and hard to move past sometimes.
And sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's so important that we can maintain that friendship, and we've all kind of, sometimes, one part of when everyone understands everyone else's suffering. I mean, I'm not going to understand what's happening to these poor people in the Ukraine, and just the horrors and terrors. I can empathize with them, and I'm sure those people will find solace of being around one another. But kind of like us for friendships and dealing with a loss like John's, it's part of that grieving process is to do it together, but to have that support. I'm thankful that we're all still friends for that.
Yeah, and you're right. I don't think it necessarily ever completely goes away, but it's good to talk about and, keep his memory alive.
100%.
Yeah, good. Really good on him. So
John would be proud of you, though, Jason, the fact that you have this podcast and doing this technological thing. So I think clearly he's had a lasting impact upon you to do this.
And I have an Apple, a MacBook, and he loved Apple computers, so he would like that too. So how do we? Oh, I have a question. I ask all my guests this. So when I talk about imperfect best in my branding, and to me it means we have a vision of the best we want to achieve in life, and we go for the vision. But when imperfections come up, be the mistakes or circumstances or whatever, we learn from those and keep going towards the best instead of stopping or going backwards. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you two?
Well, I think as Matt alluded to earlier, if you're talking in terms of the realm of medicine, everyone who works in medicine is human, and as humans, we make mistakes. And so I think it's just not that the mistake has to always cause a problem that lasts forever, but it's understanding what to do in the context of a mistake, or not even a mistake, or something that doesn't go exactly the way you want it, how you redirect your energies to make it become more of a positive thing versus a negative thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think like your imperfect best is like you learn more from your failures than your successes, and you never want to experience that. But man, whether it's a test I failed or something happened, when I reflect on that has a better impact, and I'm a better person or physician coming out of those things than I am if everything was easy and successful. And now I think, Ryan would agree, watching your kids do that. I mean, to see how they handle when things don't always go the right way, or they don't get their way, or they don't lose a game, or all those things become important and make us all better in that regard. I think when I went to medical school, I was young. And I think I didn't do well on a test, and I can still remember that they say that's the day when I changed. Say, I'm going to be better at this. I'm going to work harder. And if I don't think I had that failure or whatever, I wouldn't be the kind of physician I am today, I hope. And I think so that negative thing, like Ryan says, turn those negatives into positives.
Like Ryan says, move that energy forward.
100%.
I think you said that, right?
Yes.
Cool. Well, it's been so. It's just been amazing having you both on, and reflecting on the scope of our lives, or the panorama of our lives so far.
Yeah, I didn't even get a chance to talk about having to take tap dancing lessons because I forgot to sign up for all the good events during career fair. But yes, I'm glad that wasn't brought up in the podcast.
Oh, wow. That could have sent your life in a whole different direction, Matt, if you had really applied yourself.
Still time, I hope.
Nice. Cool. Well, I appreciate you both taking the time, and I'm so. It's such a neat thing that we've have been friends for like 4 years. It's just such a luxury and such a blessing. Thanks to both of you for being friends with each other and friends with me, and I
Thank you.
appreciate you both.
Well, thanks for giving us this opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah, I hope we can do it again. We didn't get into the irreverent stories, but thank you, Jason.
We might have to have another awkwardly awesome podcast with a different rating at some point. Good. Thanks, both of you. Oh, it's I just really enjoy talking to great people, and Dr. Matt and Dr. Ryan are two great people, and it's been fun to know them for so long. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you got a lot out of the episode, and and tune in next, not this coming Wednesday, but the 30th, where I have Mary Bowenka. She's an autism. I mean, she's done amazing work in terms of helping her community become welcoming to people who have experienced autism. So remember that on the 30th, and have an amazing day, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your time. And here's the outro. No, it's supposed to be smooth, like me just saying something and then the outro flowing, but it hasn't been smooth yet. But it will be smooth someday. Here it is.